Hi, I'm Kath Roberts, and I'm one half of Transformational Leaders Limited. And together with my business partner, Kate Griffiths, I co wrote this book, Colourful Boardrooms, aimed at facilitating change in leadership and organisational systems. And in today's video, and I'm afraid it is pre recorded because I'm travelling effectively when this will be live, I want to talk about our third principle that underpins our work, and that is this. Let go of control and allow all the voices of the system to be heard. True power then becomes authentic. So, as colour practitioners, teachers, you will know that this is all to do with the ascension journey, which of course starts here in the yellow and then evolves through gold, ultimately into pale gold. Because we only receive authenticity when we become this coherent unit, and when our thoughts and feelings are all working in complete harmony, and we can actually become this living embodiment. We can walk the talk and talk the walk. And sitting behind the colour gold, of course, is the colour platinum. And so here lies the issue, because we can't always see the wisdom that is available to us on the ascension journey. And so we put up a mirror and we get trapped, don't we, in this place, in the ego mind that loves to keep us feeling safe and certain and powerful. And the problem with this is we get taken up with this idea that we need more knowledge, or we have to have the need to be right. And surrendering control opens us really to an interior world packed full of possibility. But first, we've got to know how to navigate the terrain and recognise actually why being is the key to a life without walls, and to doing less, not more, and to optimal living. And it gets us to the heart, for me, around what authentic success is all about. It's wanting the life and the work that you actually have. See, being rather than doing, for me, converts striving into thriving, resistance into flow, fear into love, and it opens us up to our limitless potential. And of course, that brings energy and full creativity. And the English word wisdom is actually derived from an old Anglo-Saxon word meaning to see, because wisdom is a moral quality which incorporates all of our senses. And that's really what we're getting to when we're talking about authenticity. So letting go of control is as much about our own internal state and the many voices that we have inside of our own heads. And we've got to learn to silence ourselves and to integrate, because it's about the external, well, it's as much about that as well as the external practices in business as leaders, in terms of more collaboration, the greater sharing of the power, more openness and transparency of communication. Really, it's the place of no mind. And yet, how do we learn to surrender? I say that when the soul needs for expansion and growth conflict with the ego needs for safety and comfort, then you're going to meet a brick wall of fear. And that fear has to be released before we actually get any forward momentum in life. We've got to allow the voices on the inside to be louder than the voices on the outside. And of course, what happens is we fear failing. So often if we get trapped in that old pattern as leaders, then it keeps us stuck, because we yearn for the familiar, and that's the jail of unconscious habits that we can never escape from. And so we've got to learn to think beyond, in my mind, academic success knowledge. We've got to learn to push outside of our comfort zones. We've got to learn to celebrate failure as the doorway to eventual success, authentic success. So I want you to consider for a moment this question: what door do you need to walk through to get to where you want to go right now? And is that a doorway that's saying don't enter here? Is it the fear of failing, or is it the fear of being seen to stand out, or even that greater visibility perhaps? Because we've all got choice, and so we've got to ask ourselves, are we choosing in any given moment fear or faith? Fear is what you think, of course, is going to go wrong. Well, faith is quite the reverse. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for. And if we ask for help and we're open to receiving that help, then we're always going to get it. And I've learned that we've got to open our arms to receive. And we've got to start by realizing our own innate worth, because that then opens up to a life on many different levels. Because we only really receive gifts in the form of opportunities and choices to the extent that we believe that we are worthy and deserving. And that starts with learning to get out of our own way. So we've got to learn to let go of anything that keeps us small and holds us back and holds our love from flowing. And when we can let go, we can see how the universe is able to rise up and deliver and build even greater faith and capacity within us to surrender and to be with all of what is. And we've all got parts, however, parts in ourselves that have been hurt, or where we felt rejection, we felt humiliated or punished in some way. And perhaps we've learned on this journey so far that it's not great to be vulnerable, to show emotion and the fact that you care. But of course, if we don't do that, then my question to you is, what do we become? What do we become as leaders? What are we modeling to one another? See, if we allow our personality to be the leader, then our spirit ends up behind bars. But if we let the soul play and lead, then we can start to get into this divine flow. We can't run a race at full speed when we're weighed down by the past. So we've got to learn on this authentic journey of how to forgive others, but mainly, actually, it's usually always about how to forgive ourselves in the process. The next step is learning to become our own best friends. And that starts with us becoming more fully conscious of our own internal dialogue. When we start to realize how critical we can be of ourselves, we must learn to care enough for ourselves that we don't want to hurt ourselves anymore, or we don't want to sabotage relationships in the process. So for me, the process of becoming more, being more in our authenticity and our full embodiment, is about clearing our own emotional health bins, or rubbish bins. On a frequent basis, we've got to give the same attention to our inner space as we do to our outer space, and have this constant vigilance around what it is that we're receiving and accepting in our worlds. So a frequent question I ask myself is, where is my daily inspiration coming from? And is there more daily inspiration than daily criticism? You've got to figure out what brings you that kind of peace and sanctuary. Is it yoga, meditation? Is it time in nature? Is it a creative venture, working with the creative arts, or just getting involved and volunteering in something? Because the greater our investment in doing stuff that matters to us, the more that we relax and restore our spiritual health, then the greater the return we're going to have in terms of our health, our well-being, and of course our abundance, or a sense of abundance. And if we cut off our connection with divine energy, then of course we lose our beauty and we lose our appreciation for life. And we've got to learn to keep our own energy tanks full and to fill our own cups first. And for me, love is not something that needs to be pursued, learnt, or earned, because it's a gift to you, because really you are love. And sometimes we just forget that. And learning to get momentum and traction is really about this whole issue of being here now. And the greatest gift we have is now, and yet, that's why it's called the present. Once we appreciate that we create our futures in this very moment, and from a clear and empty energy field, we begin to become really focused and disciplined on what it is we wish to attract. And as we know, intentions go way deeper than goals, because they're heart-based. And there's a lot more energy coming from the heart than there is, from the brain itself. And so that makes all the difference between actually doing less and achieving far more. Because when we're in our spirit selves, we can show up authentically, powerful, in a way where we have attention in the moment, and we listen more effectively. We engage in a multisensory way rather than just with our core 5 senses. So when you practice all that you do, your attention naturally returns to each arising moment and you enter the flow zone, as the Chinese sages called the Tao, or the way. And of course, the secret to abundance is to be happy now and to detach from any outcomes. So when you get to that place which says, I really don't mind what happens, you're detached from it. You're in the best possible place to create miracles, because neediness and desperation kills any chances of being authentically powerful. So we've got to begin to see the perfection in everything. We don't need to control or label what happens to us. Our only responsibility is to claim the perfection, because we always attract what we judge, and we've been taught that beautifully in colour mirrors. So the moment we get that everything was perfect and always will be, then perfection is what we begin to attract. And gratitude really does count, because we focus on what's right rather than what's missing. Then we raise our vibration, and in doing so we build a positive connection. And of course, our present society is teaching the reverse, isn't it? For us to want more and need more and do more. And that's just a focus on lack. And we're also taught from a very early age that we give in order to receive. And if we don't get payback, then we might feel cheated in some way, or the fact that we're owed something in return. But when we actually stop and focus on what we have, which starts with the gift of life, the gift of health, free will, and then allow ourselves to feel the joy of giving just for the sake of giving, we start to get into appreciation. And approaching from this place, we can draw in a lot more energy. So gratitude is always going to bring us back to the state of grace. And finally, service becomes an act of transcendence, because service is a bridge. Service is a meditative practice. It's a catalyst to friendship. And when we own our authentic power, we naturally want to show up, of course, and give our gifts to the world in the form of service. So that's it from me today. I hope you've enjoyed this brief video, and I look forward to tuning in with you in a couple of months. Bye.